What's up guys? What's going on? BorisT here and welcome to this new video. So tell me how your summer is going. Are you enjoying your mojito on the beach? Yeah? Huh? I'm happy for you. I'm also enjoying summer. Yep. I'm really enjoying this summer. 16 degrees and hot tea. Well, since Norway weather doesn't allow us to go out and film some vlog, it's time for a studio video. So this morning I went on YouTube to watch a couple of videos, and on my homepage I've seen this video called "Why Do People Like Black Metal?" with a sad, hopeless emoji, and then the thumbnail, throwing emoji with a bunch of famous names. Let me say, it's not the first time I see a video of the punk rock NBA. For what I've seen in the past, it's something that knows usually what he's talking about. So I'm pretty sure that the thumbnail, the title, it's most like a clickbait. I can see that dislike-like ratio, which is, let's say it's like 50% almost. So you know what? Let's watch it. Oh, if you're new, by the way, BorisT from TRYGLAV here. Let's go!
Sorry about that. I'm allergic to nerds LARPing in their basement.
What's wrong with that? At least we don't take drugs.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today I'm here with a video that I never thought I would make. A video about black metal. Now, a lot of people have asked me to do a video about black metal, and
I know that he listened to metal, though.
Always kind of said no, because
he listened to metal.
What I could possibly add, because this has been documented so many times, right? And also, to be honest, I don't like it. But then I said, you know what? That's a cop-out. I don't just make videos about stuff I like. I make videos about things that are important to the heavy music scene. And whether I like it or not, black metal is definitely an important part of the heavy music scene. Sure. So I'm going to try to explain to myself and anybody else that's not into black metal, like, what's the deal? Why do people like this stuff so much? Let's get into it. So part one, the history of black metal in, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. Focusing specifically on a few key things that are important to what I'm going to talk about later in the video. Black metal started back in the early 80s with bands like Venom and Bathory and a couple others. True. Venom actually had a song called Black Metal back in 1983, so True. I guess technically maybe they invented black metal, but they didn't sound like black metal the way we think of it now. Like, they kind of sound like Motorhead, actually. True. By the way, if you've never paid attention to the lyrics to this song, they're amazing, like hilariously awful.
Rock and roll, I mean, they were fine.
But black metal as we know it started in like the late 80s, early 90s with all those Norwegian bands that you're probably familiar with. Mayhem, True. Dark Throne, Immortal, Satyricon, Emperor, all the bands that sound like this.
Oh, this sounds good though.
Or this.
And this sounds also good. 2 classics.
As far as what happened after that, I'm going to skip over.
And they sound pretty decent compared to other stuff.
A whole lot of details here because, like I said, it's been told so many times before. You can go read Lords of Chaos or whatever if you want to know all the.
Ooh! Oh my God! Or Satan. There is one thing that people that are not into black metal should never do, and that is suggest Lord of Chaos if you want to know more about black metal. I think it's one of the most hated book out there by black metal fans. I have it, I bugged it at the time, and it's just boring, and as many people in the scene say, it's kind of full of crap also. So I don't know if it's true or not, you know, about the content inside, but the book is just boring, you know, it doesn't say anything new. I think probably many people will point this out in the comment section.
The details, there's really like 2 things that I want to focus on that to me are the most interesting part of black metal. The first thing is what you would call, I guess, the creative directions, the music, the artwork, the imagery, all that stuff. And to me, the kind of key thing to understand about that is that this was a reactionary movement. It was a reaction to what was happening in death metal, which at the time True. Was kind of the most popular trendy thing going on in metal. They felt like death metal had gotten like stale and boring because it was too clean and precise and technical. Yep. And it's kind of funny that they would say that because the stuff that they were talking about by today's standards actually sounds pretty rough. Stuff like this.
I love old school productions. Come on. Sounded really good though. But he's right.
Metal had become a little bit stale and boring, and it had become a contest of like who could play the most clean, precise, technical shit with the best production. And a lot of it did sound samey and boring. There was like hundreds.
I told you, probably the title and the thumbnail were clickbait, because for now he knows what he's talking about.
Hundreds of bands, dozens of records coming out every week that sounded like this.
Fortunately, most of people will love.
And it's not that
But
that
death metal
stuff's
sounds
bad,
like
it's just
this
like, enough
nowadays.
already. Do we need a dozen albums like this every week? And so they said, fuck that. Like, we're gonna deliberately sound like shit as a way to like give the middle finger to all these death metal nerds that want to be super clean and precise. We're gonna make records that sound like this.
That Immortal album was pretty raw.
And the same was true of the artwork and imagery too. At the time, death metal imagery was kind of defined by the work of a guy named Dan
Beautiful covers.
Seagrave and a lot of other people that ripped him
Pot.
off. All these like
Amazing.
super elaborate, colorful, like intricately detailed paintings. And for the record, I love Dan Seagrave's artwork, but
Me too.
again, there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. And just like they did all these like deliberately raw, nasty, lo-fi recordings, they did the same thing with their artwork. And by now, that whole like black and white
Sunscreen and
photocopied
Unger is a
image
classic
kind of
though.
thing with old English letters, by now that's super familiar. You've seen it a billion times, but back then it was really new and shocking and different because it was like the exact opposite of what all the death metal bands are doing with their like elaborate, detailed, colorful Dan Seagrave type paintings.
Beautiful. Damn, this guy is really good.
And it was the same story with the way they dressed, where the death metal bands were super down to earth and basically just looked like dudes off the street in like shorts and t-shirts. The black metal guys again did the exact opposite of whatever the death metal guys were doing. Instead of being like normal dudes off the street, they did the whole like corpse paint and spikes and homemade armor and medieval weapons and taking pictures in the basement thing. You've seen all these famous photos like this one or this one. And in case you think I'm exaggerating or making this up about like how much of this was just a deliberate opposite reaction to death metal, check out this quote. It means black clothes, spikes, crosses, and so on. But today there are only children in jogging suits and skateboards and hardcore moral ideas. They try to look as normal as possible. These stupid people must fear black metal, but instead they love shitty bands like Deicide, Benediction, Napalm Death,
all great bands though.
Shit. We must take this scene to what it was in the past. Dead died for this cause, and now I have declared war. Death to false black metal or death metal.
I remember reading this when I was a teenager and I thought that sounded so cool, you know. But you know, after years when you read Dead died for this cause, for what? Dead died because people were wearing jogging pants, so he killed himself for that. Come on. Dead died because he was depressed, and of course Euronymous make up this story to make everything sounds more cool, you know. Which sounded cool at the time, and today's like, okay, man, whatever.
I just love the idea of this nerd
and all
from
this
some like
death
small
to
city
death
in
metal.
Norway
I'm like,
getting so angry about the fact that some American death metal band is wearing shorts. It was like the 90s
man, who
equivalent of
cares?
the guys that make videos like this.
I can say with confidence that the style known as brutal death, grindcore, whatever the fuck, is not music by definition, but a vociferous, ostentatious, overglorified noisemaker by demonstrable fact.
So that was like the creative direction, which I think was the first component of what made black metal blow up. But the second thing was basically the drama. Again, I'm not going to go into the details because this has been told a million times, but to make a long story short, like these were actually unhinged, crazy people that did like legitimately fucked up shit, like burn churches and
more than fucked up people, I think just teenagers, you know, that didn't really understand what they were doing.
People and kill each other and commit suicide and bring dead animals.
Yeah, it was all about demonstrate to be evil as possible.
Like, actual mainstream newspaper headlines, and everybody is fascinated by it because, like, how could you not be, right? It was crazy. It was like some comic book or movie, like, come to life.
Yeah, I mean, for how bad it was, nobody can deny that the first approach to black metal is because you are fascinated by this stuff, especially when there wasn't internet. And they look like something out of this world. You're not normal people at all.
Life. How could you not pay attention?
The band's former vocalist blew his own brains out with a shotgun, and then his bandmates made necklaces
this
from
interview.
pieces of his skull.
So on that note, before I talk about why I don't like
that was gold. But that's comedy in that interview.
First of all, it really was like shockingly new and fresh and different. If you watch my other videos, you know that I love people who just like come out of nowhere, do something shockingly new and different that breaks all the rules and pisses off the gatekeepers. And black metal definitely did that. Second, I actually really respect their creative vision. I think they were right that death metal had gotten a little bit stale and boring and bloated, and that
like everything, like when deathcore came out, you know, and every band, even the bands that were playing death metal, just switched to deathcore, you know, and of course
fucked up,
oversaturate
raw,
everything and
lo-fi
people
vibe is
hated
something
them.
that, you know, as somebody who grew up listening to a lot of like hardcore and punk and grind and stuff like that, I can appreciate that. It was a giant middle finger to like the metal establishment at the time, and I can respect that in the same way as that I love what the Dadaists were doing like 100 years ago as like a fuck you to the uptight.
He knows
stale
what he's
art world
saying,
at the time.
guys.
But
I
with
mean,
that said, that's pretty much where my appreciation for black
okay,
metal
now we are
stops.
going the interesting part, I guess. No, the clip is not the best to show what black metal is. Come on. This becomes such a meme.
And that
The entire band was so drunk.
That's my problem with black metal. You might think it's because of the shitty recordings, right? The ones that sound like they were made on a Fisher-Price cassette recorder in the back of a cave somewhere.
Actually, as I said, it doesn't sound bad compared to what you can hear even today. You know, some people think that true black metal is playing ultra shit, while even the bands from the time, the creators, the bands that create the genre, that didn't sound that bad. I mean, the Mysteries Doom Satana sounds great, in my opinion. Sounds organic. Even Blades in the Northern Sky sounds good.
Earlier, I actually don't mind that at all. In fact, I kind of like it. And it's actually not the politics either, although that is definitely a turnoff. Like,
there is some genres like what Darkthrone play, you know, that type of black metal that wouldn't sound good, clean. It sounds perfect as it is. Dirty.
The fact that there is an entire subgenre of Nazi black metal is definitely troubling. No, my problem with black metal is actually much more simple than that. I think it's boring. Boring music, boring forced edginess, boring
sometimes that
imagery,
the edginess.
It's just not interesting to me.
Again, no.
If there ever was something interesting and fresh about black metal, well, that was like driven on the ground decades ago. Sure, it was interesting when Mayhem and Darkthrone did the like lo-fi recordings and spikes and corpse paint thing 25, 30 years ago, but it was a lot less interesting when 9,000 bands came out that were like exact carbon copies of every single thing that those bands ever did.
He's right on that. I mean, things start to be not interesting or start to be boring when every single bands start to do the same. That's why I never use spikes or the same kind of makeup that I've seen in other bands, because it kind of become boring, you know, there's no personality in it.
Like, it's not rebellious to sound like shit when everybody sounds like shit, right?
Right, that's also true.
And yes, I'm aware that there
should be a personal
choice.
I mean,
metal after that early '90s era that I'm talking about, but to be honest, I would say the same thing about all those. There's the symphonic bands that copy Dimmu Borgir. There's the hipster black metal bands that copy Death Heaven. There's the like melodic blackened death metal bands or whatever you want to call them that copy Dissection. You know, I could go on and on, but to me, it's just a very derivative genre.
I've seen a lot of bands copy my.
If you're not into it, it gives sound. I mean, I can go on black metal promotion and out of 90 band, one is good, for example, or original. But that's because, like in any genre, if I'm going on Spotify and I put death metal playlist, it will all sound kind of the same. There's a few bands that step out from the others. It's all about knowing the genre and know where to search for.
Makeup, and I don't care, because there's only one Abbott.
Now, you might be saying, isn't that true of every subgenre? Isn't every subgenre defined by a handful of pioneers and then a whole bunch of shitty bands that knock them off? Yes, if you said that, you would be right. That is true of pretty much every subgenre. Yeah. But the reason why it's a lot harder for me to look past that in the case of black metal is because of the disparity between how black metal presents itself and the reality of what it actually is. Black metal seems to think of itself as this group of like intellectually and creatively and morally superior rugged individualists who don't give a fuck what anybody thinks of them, but in reality, it's a bunch of mostly really derivative bands that are copying stuff that other people did 20 or 30 years ago, wearing goofy costumes, taking themselves seriously, and acting like giant fucking assholes to everybody else.
Yes and no. Maybe before. Before was like that. There's still few people that thinks like that. People that sometimes I found under my comments, like how I'm the reason why black metal sucks nowadays, like I'm one person, but okay, and stuff like that. Are people stuck in the past? There is some of them, but the majority of the black metal scene is pretty open, if you ask me, pretty open to new sounds, etc. And it's totally different than what it was even 15 years ago. Mostly, I think, thanks to internet, you know, because people realize that there's a person behind the musician, you know, and they can actually see, you know, the life of this musician, and they see that it's not too much different from their life, basically.
Who are they? It's Roots. Which one? Who the fuck?
I love this interview because you can see Blasphemer. How Blasphemer is embarrassed. He's
And
trying to not
before
laugh.
anybody mentions it, yes, you could absolutely say the same thing about like real punk, which is why I'm very critical of that genre for all the same reasons. I guess if I was to sum it up, I feel about black metal the way that a lot of people probably feel about metalcore. It's a bunch of like generic, trendy bands that kind of all sound the same to me, and they seem a lot more interested in their image than they do in making interesting music.
I'm one of those person. I'm not into metalcore, but I associate metalcore to the guy who screams till the main chorus, then explode with his super cringe, melodic, clean vocals, and that's for me metalcore, you know. But probably there is some other stuff about metalcore.
But you know what? All that might not even bother me if the black metal fan base wasn't so notoriously shitty. And I think that even most black metal fans would agree with me on that one.
Before, yes.
It's a genre that's pretty much defined by gatekeeping and conformity, right?
Before.
Like if you listen to that quote I read from Euronymous a minute ago, it's basically him like laying out the dress code and enforcing it and saying, if you don't listen to the right bands and wear the right clothes, you can't sit at our table.
I was like that. I was an elitist, and I was basically that quotes were my Bible, you know. But then you grow up, that things becomes stuff that just mostly teenagers follow. Or if you are over 50s and you're still stuck, you know, in the 90s, and you don't understand that was mostly image.
It's rigid conformity packaged as rebellion. And I don't know about you, but when I read that quote, I'm just like, dude, you can take that dress code and list of approved bands and shove it up your ass. That sounds like the exact opposite of all the reasons that I got involved with punk and hardcore and metal in the first place, and it's especially hard to take seriously coming from a guy who put on homemade armor and posed for pictures in the basement of their house because it kind of looks like a castle dungeon.
It's fine. I mean, what's wrong with that? It's cool.
Oh yeah, and there is the Nazi thing. Kind of hard to look past that. With all that being said, like I mentioned earlier, there are actually some little pockets of black metal that I really, really love. Some people doing some very interesting, like very challenging, creative, avant-garde kind of stuff, I guess you would say. And I don't hear people talk about them that often, so I just wanted to mention those quickly before we move on. The first one is Have a Hedge.
What the fuck is this?
As you can tell, this is
Seeing water flowing?
pretty weird shit, but this is by far my favorite black metal band. Dethrone the Son of God is the album that most people seem to like, and I do like that one. But what I like even more is all the later stuff, which is really more of what you would call like ambient dark noise than anything you would call metal, I guess. Second is Torture.
We are so different. I mean, my man can't appreciate the mysteries Doom Satanas, Blades in the Northern Sky, but he appreciates stuff that I never understood. Basically, there's no music inside because the production is so bad that you don't hear the drums. Like here, you can hear the keyboard, whatever it is, and a guy do I mean, I will never put headphones and listen to something like this because there's no music in it.
Kind of along the same lines, it's
There's
really
no
more
music.
like weird, atmospheric, dark, ambient noise than like metal. I don't really know much about this band. Other than
you
I
can
love
listen
them.
to
If
that.
you know anything about it, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear more stuff from them if it exists. And Abruptum.
Oh, this is the band of Morgan from Marduk. But I never liked
More
this
like
style.
noisy, ambient kind of stuff, but much
not
more
my
polished than
stuff.
Torture or Have a Hedge. Like there's actual riffs that you can hear. And the last one, I'm actually not going to try to pronounce the name of this band.
My point is always, where's the music?
So obviously some pretty inaccessible, difficult stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily choose to
Yeah.
sit
I mean, you're talking shit of a genre, and then you listen something that is even more underground in the black metal scene. Like,
down and listen to this very often, but I really respect how just like weird and challenging it is. So this stuff is interesting to me because it really like fulfills the promise of everything that black metal said it was in the beginning. It's actually challenging and even like challenges the creative boundaries of black metal itself. Like as far as I know, even black metal fans don't like this stuff very much. And I will always back people who push their creative boundaries.
but there's no creative boundaries there. I mean, you can find tons of those bands. Sometimes people send me their song for fun to do a reaction for, knowing that I will have a funny reaction about that, because also they know that there's no music there, so there's nothing creativity there, because I can record something. You can record something like that in 5 minutes, literally.
Whether I like it or not, I do have to admit the black metal bands were really fucking good at marketing, and there's a lot that we can learn from them.
Oh, I remember this. I totally forgot about that.
Tribalism as a marketing tactic. I've talked about this a bunch in the context of bands like Five Finger Death Punch and My Chemical Romance and Insane Clown Posse, and it's super relevant here as well. Black metal is all about harnessing the power of that us versus them dynamic, because humans are hardwired to this. We're
Before, I think that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, nowadays you can see black metal bands touring with death metal bands, touring with, I don't know, even with deathcore metal bands. It's not like before the black metal tours were packed just with black metal bands. I've seen Satyricon touring with Fight the Fight. I think it's an original metalcore band, so, I mean...
bands and
it was
be
before.
Distrustful and suspicious of anybody that's not in our tribe, right? It's just evolutionary biology.
One of us, we accept them, one of us, you will never one of us.
But the black metal bands intuitively took advantage of that part of human psychology where they were the ones fighting for real metal, fighting against the posers who wanted to like commercialize metal by wearing
Yes, I mean, he knows a lot about black metal, he knows what he's talking about, but he's a little bit stuck in the past. He's stuck in the time where people were throwing like bottles or a piece of grounds or even shit on bands like Avenged Sevenfold because they were playing before Slayer or Iron Maiden and stuff like that. I remember those time. I grew up in those time. You will never see that nowadays. But before it was really a common thing. I remember even Bring Me the Horizon playing somewhere and people were throwing bottles on them all the time, you know. Something that it's hard that will ever happen again because all festivals are mixed with different genre and people just, you know, mind their business and wait for their bands.
And playing technical death metal. It sounds kind of ridiculous, right? But obviously there's people who believed in it. People literally killed for that. Tribalism is powerful shit. So the takeaway is if you can position yourself as the champion for this group of misunderstood, oppressed people, that is powerful marketing.
This is the stuff that ridiculized black metal, let's say. I'm just like, whatever, but I never understand those kind of stuff.
And second, the power of storytelling and characters. Again, as humans, this is part of our like natural neurological programming. Like we are wired to process information in the format of stories driven by compelling characters. That's what the Bible is. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is. That's what Lord of the Rings and Star Wars are. Like this is how our brain wants to see things, as like a linear narrative with a cast of compelling characters at the center of it. And we want to share that story with other people, just like back in the caveman days when you're like sitting around the campfire talking about how you killed this big ass woolly mammoth or whatever. And black metal was like the perfect storm of things to take advantage of that part of human psychology, right?
Well, I was involved in a killing.
It was this actually crazy story with super compelling, larger-than-life characters at the center of it that made for like the perfect viral story that took advantage of this sort of inherent pattern of human communication. Dude, did you hear about all those crazy bands in Norway that like
he's totally right on this.
To, like, really drive that home. Compare that with another genre like, say, industrial that really never captured the public's imagination like that. It's obvious why, right? Like the story...
It's fascinating. You can't deny that. We all grow up with that, reading on Wikipedia, make fantasies like, wow, those people are nuts. Those people are, they are not normal. They're probably living in the forest, you know, isolated, but everyone playing black metal and be evil.
And characters just aren't there the way
was
they
cool.
are in black metal.
Before
so
internet destroyed everything.
Characters that capture the attention of the people that
and
you
take
want
off
to
the
reach with
atmosphere.
your marketing. That's the question you need to answer.
Oh, Lord of Chaos. I should do a review about that movie.
And third, as my friend Chase Jarvis says, you can't stand out and fit in at the same time. If you want to get the world's attention, you are not going to get it by following in line and duplicating what other people have already done. Not going to happen. Like the fact that everything they did was the exact opposite of like what was cool and acceptable in metal at the time. How could you not pay attention to that? And I'm not saying you should be some sort of reactionary and just do everything the opposite of what everyone else is doing just for the sake of being different. That's corny. But what I am saying is you've got to honestly ask yourself the question of like, what's actually different about what I'm doing and why would anybody give a shit about it?
Ooh, nobody. It doesn't really have to be different. It can be like the same, not a total copy, of course, but the important is that it's played well and there's souls in it, you know? Doesn't have to be original. It's hard to be original nowadays. Everything was already done, let's say.
Who gives a shit?
And lastly,
I mean, now the original thing is basically the Gent, which is just a progressive metal with super down-tuned guitar that sounds like fart. So, wow.
there's an audience for everything. It's easy to think that what we're into is so niche and weird that there's nobody else in the world that would ever care about what I'm doing. But look, this stuff is proof that that's not true. It doesn't get much more extreme and challenging and inaccessible than like that early black metal. In fact, it was like expressly designed with the goal of being inaccessible. And yet millions of people all over the world know about it and love it. Again, to draw an analogy to the fine art world, it's kind of like Pollock or Rothko or Duchamp or any of these other people that did this stuff that was like deliberately inaccessible and even like antagonistic to the viewer, and yet that's exactly why it became popular. So don't listen to that voice in the back of your head that tells you that you're never going to be able to get an audience for what you do because it's too weird, it's too niche, it's too out there. If these Norwegian nerds LARPing in the woods can build an audience of millions all over the world, then you can do it too. So there you go.
Well, I'm glad that he doesn't give a fuck, you know, about the words he used. He's been himself, so it's rare nowadays on YouTube, you know?
For all the people who ask me to do a black metal video, now you have one. Whether I like this stuff or not, I think it's undeniable that there's a lot that we can learn from it, from like a marketing, consumer psychology, branding kind of perspective. So hopefully this shed a little bit of light on it. So yeah, let me know what you think.
Well, to be honest, I don't understand the ratio of like-dislike, but I'm not surprised nowadays because everybody is offended by everything. I mean, he didn't say anything that bad in the video. He brought facts and he added his personal opinion. So anyways, let me read a little bit of comments. They're all nerds who think that they're better than everyone. Sounds a lot like you. You can go read Lord of Chaos. Lost any and all credibility with that one statement. Never let a punk rocker explain a dark genre, because they are all referred to Lord of Chaos. Black metal was really good at marketing. That was probably the biggest insult to black metal in this video. Well, it was a marketing at the end. Even Varg, during the process, I remember when he was talking about the church, he said it's a good promotion for my album. Bro has no clue what he's talking about. I mean, with facts, he was on point all the time beside the Lord of Chaos book, which he probably didn't know that isn't the best source. But for the rest, come on. I think that people are mostly pissed about the thumbnail, you know, with the throwing emoji and the sad face. With that said, guys, we are at the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this one. And as always, I will see you all in the next one. Cheers!
Satan.